Hi, and welcome to the BookishStitcher podcast. My name is Jeanette. You can find me on Ravelry and Instagram and Goodreads as BookishStitcher, all one word. I hope you guys have had a wonderful week since I last podcasted. We had a pretty good one. It's raining here right now, so you might get some ambiance from the rain. Hopefully it's not thunderstorming or anything, so it shouldn't be too loud. But yesterday was Worldwide Knit in Public, and so I met some of my local knitting friends in San Antonio at the mall here, probably one of the largest ones around, and we met up in the food court and had food and knit, and my son actually came too and brought his knitting, and it was really funny because he will knit, but he'll do a row and then he's done, so he doesn't get a lot accomplished. So he was knitting and he'd knit 2 or 3 rows and be like, "Are we done?" "You guys knit for a really long time." Like, yes, we do. And he's actually asked, because he's almost done with the thing he's working on, to be on the podcast, so you guys might get to see my son on the podcast soon, and he's a very big talker, so that will probably be a longer episode, but he's going to come on sometime and show what he's been working on because he really wants to. And that was, we had other stuff with friends and different things like that, but that was the main knitting thing that I did. We get on to finished objects because I have a lot this week. It actually looks like I've done a lot more than I feel like I have, but I think it's because I had a lot of projects that were at that final end stage, but they're all done and they're really beautiful, and I'm excited to show you. I'm just going to get a sip of my coffee here first. Just having some iced coffee. This is in my Julia Dean mug. She's on Etsy, and her stuff is beautiful. First thing I have finished to show you, I forgot sock blockers for these, but these are my blueberry cake waffle socks adaptation because the pattern calls for a different weight, and I just changed the pattern stitch count. That's what they look like. I knit these were my Mother's Day cast on with my signature needles that my husband got me, and I knit this using one of my 15 oldest skeins, and it was some Zauberball Crazy, and I still have a ton of this yarn left. I don't know if any of you are like me, but I like the yarn to be done at the end of the project most of the time, so when I have a ton left, it's kind of like, but those are done, and I really like how they turned out. Other than there's a couple like where it's really, really dark, that's not my favorite, but I like where it kind of twists into the different colors right there. Next, I have some really beautiful finished objects to show you guys. I will show my mom's shawl first. It's done. It was the Susanna Icy Spring Fling Mystery Shawl Cal, and there was just one clue left. It was clue 8 or 9, and it was 3 rows and a bind off, so it really took no time at all. And then I blocked this. I don't normally block things just because, especially if there's any garter stitch in them, I like them to have that squishiness, but this I wanted to slightly block. I'm not an aggressive blocker, and I will never be, so I just wanted to open this up a little bit though, and it turned out really pretty. It's very long, goes from here all the way to here, and I think my mom is going to love it. It's very light after the blocking and the soaking and kind of stretching it out. It's very light and airy. I think it'll be perfect for those evenings when she goes to see her plays at the Majestic, which is a theater here. And that's the back, but it has lots and lots of beads, and I can't wait to give it to her. That was her Mother's Day present that just got finished. The next thing I have to show you, and the yarn for that was some Desert Vista dye works in a gradient, the Mona Lisa gradient. This next one is my finished shawl for the January Yarns knit along. She's doing a knit along in her group right now, and I believe it ends at the end of June, and it can be any shawl, and so I chose the Shores of Valinor shawl by Amy Noel Walker, I believe, and this is out of January Yarns, of course, in 2 colors, Orchid and Graphite, I believe, and it's in her DK. And I'm in love with this shawl. It's so pretty, you guys. There's the stripe section. I need to block this one just at the top. I'm not going to really block it too much, but Then we go into this gorgeous diamond part. And then like an ocean waves, and then the border is so pretty. Do you see that? You can kind of see it stretched out here. It's so pretty. I loved working on this shawl so much. I think this is an amazing pattern. Only 18 people have knit it, but you know, I think there are often those overlooked gems on Ravelry, and I definitely think this is one of them. And it's gorgeous, and it's huge. This is going to go to a friend of mine. I really want to keep it, but I might knit myself another one. But it's really big. See if I can show you. Definitely folds over the shoulders nicely. I like it. And I know my friend will love it because her favorite colors are purple and gray, which I often think that maybe I like purple and gray so much because it reminds me of her and just makes me smile. That's all my finished objects, which is a lot. It's 3. I can't remember the last time I've had 3 finished objects for 1 week. And then I have a few works in progress. First, in my Stitch by Sasha bag, I have my son's tube socks. And these are out of some Fiber Knit Dye Works in the light blue and lemon. I finished the first one. I worked on these at Knit in Public Day, and it was funny because I was thinking, should I bring 2 projects? I'm going to get so much done. No. Turns out when you bring your 8-year-old, you don't get as much done as you thought you would. So we went to visit the Lego store, and we went to visit Lush, and just kind of wandering around the mall, and he was hungry and things like that. These are for him, and they're just tube socks because I wanted him to be able to wear them for longer. And I normally would end the cuff after this blue one, but he asked for them to be longer. So it's about 2.5, 3 inches of ribbing. And the first one's done. And then I just cast on the toe. We're in the car today going to get groceries, so it's very tiny. And these now, since the blueberry cake waffle socks are done, those will be my coffee morning knitting time. Because I like to get up before the kids and come have coffee and knit on socks. The next thing I'm going to show you is in my new You Sew and Sew bag. And I showed this last week. And these are, I'm going to knitting retreat this summer, the Super Summer Knit Together, and they're collecting hats for the homeless. So I'm just doing up a bunch of these. I'm probably not going to show these again until I'm finished. But this bag is full of worsted weight scraps, and I'm just going to keep knitting hats, and then when I'm done, I'll show you guys all the ones that I did. This is the one I'm working on right now. It's just some pink Knit Picks Brava, which is just an acrylic, I believe 100% acrylic, because you want them to be easy to be cared for. And then I am striping in every 2 rows. I'm doing, for every 2 rows of the pink, I'm doing 1 row of this. And you may recognize this. This is some leftover, another Crafty Girl and the Swedish Chef, I believe. And I knit my daughter a giant Bonnie mouse out of this. And this is the little scrap that was left over, and I'm using it for that. I love doing these hats for the sole reason, well, I love that they go for a good cause and you get raffle tickets, but I love using up scraps because I always have so many buckets and buckets of scrap yarn, and these I can just pick a color that works with it and mix it in however I want to. The next thing I worked on is in my Bags by Awesome Granny. It's really fun. And this is my Hitofude. I'm saying that. My Japanese teacher and I on Wednesday, she was telling me how to pronounce that because in Japanese you don't pronounce the F, I believe, and the I sounds like an E. So it's Hitofude. And and the Hitofude is by, let me click over really fast, Hiroko Ukatsu. Trying to sound that right. Since I'm learning Japanese, I want to be able to say it correctly. And this is what I worked on the most this week, actually. And it's all in here. This bag is so big and it nicely fits everything that I'm working on. And the yarn I am using for this sweater is some Jinx yarns, and it's in her single merino, and it's in the rain colorway, which is appropriate for right now because it's definitely raining outside. And it's 100% superwash merino. It's a single, and it has 400 yards. So it's going to have a nice drape to it. And as you can see, I only have this tiny little bit left, the first ball. So this got a ton of work this week. Last week, I put in a progress marker so I could show you guys. Last week, I had done from there to there, and this week I did from there to there. So I did a lot more, and I'm actually one repeat behind. My goal was to do, because this has a deadline, my goal was to do one repeat every day, and I'm a little bit behind. I didn't get yesterday's done because this was not something I could take with me to knit in public day. But I have to have this done by the end of July for a knitting thing that I'm doing online on Ravelry. And then the last thing I have cast on is actually a new cast on, and it is for there's a cow going on in the Bags by Awesome Granny Ravelry group, and it's for any pattern by Melanie Berg or Stephen West, and I am doing a Melanie Berg because I had the yarn for this, and I'm really right now trying to use yarn that I have for the intended project, because sometimes you'll get something and you'll think, I want to knit this. And so the Hitofude one was, that yarn was for that sweater, and I got that last summer, so I'm using that. And then this yarn that I got is some Frabtis, I think that's right, Frabtis Fibers. Yes, Frabtis Fibers, dyed and spun in the USA. And this is really cool. I showed this on the podcast almost when I first started back in September, I think October, when I went to this yarn store called the Tinsmith's Wife. They had a kit, and it had a large skein in a solid or just a neutral color, and then they had mini skeins in coordinating bright colorful ones that went along with that. So I thought automatically when I saw that kit that it would be great for the Moonraker shawl by Melanie Berg, and since Awesome Granny is having this knit along right now, it was perfect. It was meant to be. So that is the one I'm doing. It was a Wonderland Yarns Mad Hatter kit. And the main color, and this is in my You So and So bag too that I love. The main color for this is a gray. And then it has a whole bunch of mini skeins. I believe it has more than the pattern even needs. I know that, but I don't know. I'm going to try to include them all. I'm just going to try to modify the pattern. But of course, we have purple and like different shades of purple. It's almost a pinky purple, almost a magenta purple, and a dark, dark purple. And then it's all my favorite colors, a blue and then a green. And the blue is the one I've been using. And so I have this much done. I think it's really pretty. Can you see the little things that it's creating in the yarn? And these, when you first start to do them, I did not understand what the pattern was trying to tell me. So if you're ever knitting this pattern and you're confused and you want some help, you can just message me and I will tell you what it took me several attempts to figure out. I think the pattern is written great. It's just different people think of different knitting terms in different ways. And that was the confusing part for me, is that had I been writing the pattern, I would have written it out differently than she had, but I'm sure that for her brain it worked perfectly. It's just different people's brains think differently, you know, so I'm excited. And I'm loving knitting on this. Put that all back in the bag. That is all my works in progress, just those 4. And 3 or 4 is a happy number that I'm good with. So I feel very good about the amount of projects I have on my needles right now. And none of those will probably be done for, maybe the socks for my son. Maybe those will get done this week if I work on them a lot in the mornings. But it's funny because this week I had so many finished objects, and then next week it might be, I don't have any to show you. But I will try to get the socks for my son done so I can have something new to cast on and work on. Coffee's so wonderful. And that brings me to, let's do enabling, and then I'll talk about group news. It was my anniversary this past week, my 11-year anniversary, and so many people, I posted a picture of my husband and I on our wedding day on Instagram, and so many people were saying, you know, how old were you? Or you look so young. And of course, people said how beautiful we looked, and that's so sweet. Thank you guys for all the kind comments. And we got married pretty young. This is our 11 years, and we got married. Both of us could not drink on our honeymoon. Only one of us could. And everybody on the cruise ship, because we took a cruise for our honeymoon, they kept joking with us, the older couples that were on there, and asking if we had to get our parents' permission to get married because we both looked super young. Before I had my kids, I was super, super skinny, and my husband just has a baby face. I guess I do too, but it's funny because we have been married for 11 years, but we got married really young, so that's kind of how that works. But anyways, it was our anniversary, and my husband, he doesn't always know what kind of gifts to pick, so I guess he decided this time to go to my Etsy and just buy some stuff off there, or buy it, because I keep my Etsy cart full. It's almost as though it's a wish list. You know, I see something and I think, oh, that's really pretty, so I put it in my cart, and then I just leave it there. I don't buy it right away until like my paycheck comes in from work or something along those lines. But I will keep it in there, and then if somebody else buys it, I think, well, it wasn't meant to be. So my husband went and bought my Etsy cart for our anniversary, and a couple of the things came in. I will now have enough enabling to show you guys till I go to the knitting retreat. It's not all yarn because I have pretty varied taste on there, but one thing was yarn that came in this week. And this is O Loops, and it's Walking Among the Irises. And it's gorgeous. And the thing that intrigued me about this was the blend of the yarn. It's called Egyptian Fingering, and it's 50% alpaca, 25% silk, and 25% linen. And I never heard of a blend like that, so I'm really interested to see how it'll work out. If any of you have ever knit with a similar blend for yarn, tell me, like, would this be good socks? I'm not sure with the silk and alpaca, I don't know. But maybe a shawl or something. So if you have any ideas about don't knit socks with this, it will get holes in it or something like that, just go ahead and tell me in the thread for this episode. And the next thing he got me is he got me 2 prints from one of my favorite artists on Etsy. My house is kind of a hodgepodge of all my different favorite styles. So one room will be done in like modern, one room will be done with art. We have a friend that has an art gallery up in Chicago, or he used to, and he did us beautiful paintings for a wedding gift. And so you have a room like that. I have one room that reminds me of my grandmother's living room. It was the 90s when I used to go visit my grandmother. She's no longer alive, but I used to go visit her, but her living room looked like the 70s. Even though I was born mid-80s, I still thought her living room was so fun. So we have a room that looks like that. I have a room that's painted dark blue and then has pictures of the ocean and ships sailing on the ocean, like very old kind of 18th century sailboats. And so I have lots of different art around the house. I guess that was a long story to tell you that, but one of my rooms is decorated in folk art. So I have this artist that I really, really like, and my husband got me 2 prints from her that I had in my Etsy cart. I'm just going to open this really quick. Sorry for the crinkling if you have headphones. Her work is beautiful, and I actually, one of the very first episodes of the podcast, I did a drawing for some of her stuff. But there's the little card. She always sends a free thing. And there's her information. And it's Doodah Days, and this is a tiny size print of an original painting by Diana Doodah with love. Thanks for shopping. And this is one of the prints my husband got me. And what I love is she has the folk art kind of thing. You see the eyes, those are very styles of folk art, but she does mixed media. So it says she lived happily ever after in her cozy little cottage by the sea. And I just really love how she has the mixed folk art along with that. And the other one, and it says right down there, it says wonderful day. And I really like those. And so that was all my enabling I had. The next and last, oh wait, group news. Okay, so we currently have going on in the group BookishStitcher all one word podcast on Ravelry. We have a fingering weight cowl, which is going on all summer, and I'm really excited, and people are posting their FOs, and there's going to be a medium-sized bag by Awesome Granny as a prize, a skein from Undead Yarn, a pattern from Susanna IC, so we have some wonderful prizes. So go ahead and post. You can do as many posts as you want to, and as many FOs. You can do whips, you can hold the fingering weight double to use it up. It's just, the idea is just use up fingering weight. It's going to be a summer of getting that fingering weight out of our stash because I have so much of it. And I got some more, as you can see, for my anniversary. So that's going on. The other thing we have going on right now is we had a poll up for a read-along. And it has been so close. The read-along we're going to be doing with Robin from Stitching Between Pages. And the poll for that was so close. There were 3 books in the running. And I just looked before I podcast, and so I'm going to be announcing the book. Hopefully it hasn't changed because I can't lock the poll. I have to go and erase it and add all that stuff in. But last time I looked, Cat's Eye by Margaret Atwood had won. So that will be the book that we were doing for the read-along. I feel so bad because they were all neck and neck for almost the entire time. And so I want to be like, let's read them all. Maybe we will. Maybe Robin and I will do more of them. But Cat's Eye was ahead by 1 vote. And then I think the Paying Guest was next in line. And then the next was the Girls of the Atomic City. It was all right there. And so that will be the book. I think we're going to give about a week or more to get your book. I will post all that up in the thread. I'll send a message to Robin and we'll discuss the timeline for all that. But yeah, so go ahead and go get Cat's Eye by Margaret Atwood for the read-along if you would like to join in on that. And then the next thing is we hit 500 members in the Ravelry group. I am stunned. I never in my wildest dreams ever thought that there would be 500 members in my Ravelry group. Wow. But thank you guys all for joining. And so it's time for another member giveaway. And last time we did project bags, so this time I want to do something different, yarn or stitch markers or something. But I was going to put a call out there to all of you to see what you would like for the next thing. Give me ideas of what I should do, because if there's yarn or stitch markers, if there's an indie dyer that you love, especially if you're an indie dyer and you watch the podcast or stitch marker maker and you're in the Ravelry group, I would love to do yours for me to buy a skein of your yarn for somebody in the group, because I feel like our group is a little community and I want to really support people who are in it. I like to get bags from people that are in the group and that kind of thing. So if you're an indie dyer and you're in the group, please just message up there on the thread for this episode and say, hey, I'm an indie dyer. And we'll just go from there, because I really like the idea of supporting people that are in our little group. And I guess it's not so little anymore. It's a medium-sized group at 500. It just blows my mind. I'm so thankful for all of you. And that's just going to be, I will put the thread up for that when I decide, but please give me ideas. I would love to know what you would like to see for the 500 member giveaway, and I will be putting that up sometime this week after I get ideas from everyone, and I'll keep that open for 2 weeks so that everybody can have a longer chance to enter, because I know some people don't always have time. I don't always have time to watch things right when they come out. So I just want to give everybody as long of a chance as possible. I think that's all the group news. Take a sip of my coffee. The last thing for this week is the book. And, sorry, I am in love with this book. I found myself carrying it around like a child carries around their little blanket, and I found every time after I would read a section of it, I would go and tell my husband, and when I finished reading it, I said, "Do you want to read this book?" And he said, "I don't need to. You already told me all of it." And I know that I just reviewed something by this author a few weeks ago, but it's one of those things, you know, when you finish a book and you loved it so much that you need to share it while it's fresh on your mind. That is what this book is. And I have something in my eye now, so if I'm blinking a lot, that's why. But the book this week is by maybe the most brilliant historical writer, Hampton Sides. And it's In the Kingdom of Ice, the grand and terrible polar voyage of the USS Jeanette. I got this book as a Christmas present because it has my name in it, kind of. I just have one N in my name, but it has my name in it, so it kind of interested me. It was by Hampton Sides, who I kind of feel that once you find an author that's amazing, I just try to read a lot of the works that they've written. And I wouldn't say that I was into polar exploration before picking up this book, but now I love it. And this is one of those books that I could do an hour-long podcast just on it because I loved it so much. So let me tell you about it. Okay, the book begins with the background of how the idea for this polar expedition to the North Pole began. And DeLong, who is the captain of the USS Jeanette, fell in love with the North Pole and the Arctic from a rescue mission that he went and rescued somebody from there. And he kind of fell in love with it, and he came back and he had the idea that he got the bug, it said in the book, I believe. He wanted to go and to explore all the way to the top. And back then they used to kind of have this idea that a warm current flowing from Japan, I believed, or that area, flowed up, and that at the top of the world, poor guys, that it was a warm climate, or that there wasn't a whole bunch of ice, and that there could possibly be this kind of prehistoric life that was still existing up there. There were all kinds of ideas floating around, and as you know, people will formulate different ideas based on all kinds of things. So he wanted to go and explore, and he needed somebody to finance this because this, as you can imagine, having a crew and having a boat built to break through the ice and supplies and everything is not cheap. And so he went to the military, I believe, or somebody who had financed other voyages, and they all said no. They said they were done, they weren't going to do it anymore. But then he went to the most wonderful and unusual, not the most wonderful, but he went to a very unusual and eccentric character from the past, James Bennett Gordon Jr., I believe. I believe I'm getting his names in the right order. But he was the owner of the very large newspaper, the Herald, at the time. I hope I'm getting all this right. That's why I wanted to review it now, so that it's all fresh in my memory. But Bennett was such an eccentric character in history. It talks about he was the last American to ever fight in a duel. That's in quotation marks because it's not really known, you know, it's just a big thing, but talks about that in the book, and his relationship with women, and he's kind of crazy, and he was so just out there doing all kinds of insane things that the richer people, the old money, in New York kind of rejected him. So he was just like, I have so much money, I will just build my own new club of friends. And he built casinos and all kinds of different stuff. And he collected owls, which makes me love him because, as you guys know, owls are one of my top 3 favorite things that I love. And he decided to finance the voyage. And the USS Jeanette was actually Bennett's sister. So it was named after his sister. And so they get all the stuff together, get all their supplies, and they head out. And Bennett doesn't go with them. DeLong goes and a whole bunch of other people. And it just gets you so involved in the characters. I was so invested because they're going on, and early on they get stuck in ice. And I thought, okay, this is not going to end well. This is not going to end well. And I went into it it's a true story. I went into it not knowing any of the history of this. And I didn't want to find it out because I wanted to experience it along with the story. And so at first I thought, this cannot end well for any of these people. But then when of course, as you can guess, grand and terrible, the ship does sink. I don't think that's giving anything away because it says on the back. But the ship sinks and they decide to trek over the ice to get back to Siberia to try to be rescued. And little miracles keep going their way. When I was first reading, I was like, they're all gonna make it. I kept telling my husband, they're all gonna live. I'm so excited. And then I would read some more. I'm like, oh, they're not all gonna live. They're all gonna live. It was a roller coaster of emotions. And I don't like to cry at books. I sobbed at this book. I'm not ashamed to admit it. I sobbed at this book. People that I didn't want to die did, and I'm not going to tell you who. I'm not going to give spoilers, but it was so good. I can't say enough. This book I wrote on Goodreads. I gave it 5 stars, and I said this book deserves all the stars. It has found a way into my heart, and it will stay there forever. And even if you don't like history, I would recommend this book to you because it was so wonderful. You know, if you really don't like history, maybe get it from your library or something like that. But if you love history and you love to have the history books around, get it. I bookmarked a couple quotes that I think just one quote that I wanted to read from the book because they do, after the ones that live get rescued, they go to Russia, which I love Russia. And I'm reading a book right now that is not portraying Russia in a very nice light. And I know there's bad stuff about every country. You could pick almost any country and find stuff in its past to portray it in a poor light. So this quote that kind of portrays Russia in a good light made me smile. So I'm just going to read it really quick. Alexander III, a bald, gruff, bearish man with an intense gaze, greeted blank, so you won't know who survived, and 2 seamen. The Tsar was fully aware of the story of the Jeanette, and he wanted to commiserate with the Americans on behalf of the entire Russian nation. And this is the quote that I love. I trust, he said, that it was the rigor of our climate alone, and not the coldness of heart of any of my people, that caused the death of your comrades. And I really love that because every Russian I've ever met, because I studied Russian and I used to go to meetups with Russian groups, and every Russian I've ever met is so sweet and so kind and would give you the shirt off their back if you were cold, even though a lot of them don't have much to give. So that passage really, really touched my heart. And this book is just wonderful. I do want to read a review from the back of the book that very well summed up how the book was for me. And this quote is by Carolyn Alexander, best-selling author of The Endurance and the Bounty. And the quote goes, drawing on lost letters and diaries, first-hand experience of the polar landscape, and his own masterly storytelling skills, Hampton Sides conjures the doomed USS Jeanette and her courageous crew with haunting power. As the drama escalates on ice, sea, and land, the characters of these men and their extraordinary gallant leader loom larger and larger. The reader is drawn on into the ice, from the first page, and will not want to leave until the fate of every man is known. Not gonna cry, because it's making me remember the fate of some of the men. Okay. But that sums it up for me. I did not want to leave till the fate of every single man was known. And this is going to be so telling for me, is that I have never in my life read ahead. I don't believe in it. I kind of am one of those people that feel like, oh, you shouldn't have it ruined for you. I read ahead in this book, not to the end because I didn't want to do that far, but when it looked like they weren't going to make it, I would read 4 or 5 pages ahead to make sure that they did, and then go back. That's how invested I was. I can't tell you. This is my favorite historical nonfiction book I've ever read. Hands down, million times, yes. And I sobbed and I laughed and I hope, and all the men on the ship were amazing. And they could have all broken down and been horrid to each other, and it could have gone really wrong, but just the friendship and the bond. And it really showed the wonderful heart these men had. And maybe it was a thing of the time period, and I know that, chivalry, it was very big back during the time of this book, but the heart of these men that went on this voyage, they were just beautiful and courageous and so gracious to one another, and I really loved it. And this is my longest podcast ever, because I could talk about this book over and over again. If you've read it, please message me, and we can commiserate in our sadness over who died and who didn't, and our love of this book. But again, this is Hampton Sides in the Kingdom of Ice, the grand and terrible polar voyage of the USS Jeanette. And that's all I have this week. I'm really glad that I made it through that without crying, because I wanted to review it while it was fresh on my mind, but because it's fresh on my mind, reading that review and about the men makes me teary-eyed. But I hope that you all have a great week up ahead, and I hope that you get to do all the things you love. Okay, bye.